just one second. Okay, so while everyone is clocking in or checking into this info session, just some kind of housekeeping things. My name is Liz Coleman. I'm one of the enrollment advisors here for the Masters of Science and Finance fully online program. And so we are thrilled to be able to welcome you all to this session. I know it's Monday. Some of you are spending your lunch hour with us, and some of us are starting your day first off with us. So shout out to those on the West Coast. So that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the online platform is we can be in a space with people from all over the country and even outside of the US. So again, I do sincerely appreciate your time. This is going to be roughly about a 45-minute session. It is going to also be recorded. So we know that life happens. Many of you are at work or you're working from home and you have busy schedules. And so if for any reason you do have to skip out early, don't worry. This session will be provided to you later. That way you can rewatch, or if you just want to see these amazing gentlemen that we're going to be able to speak to, if you just want to see their faces over and over, be sure just to continue to watch that. We are going to have a Q&A feature. Today's purpose is to hear from our guest speakers, and I'll introduce them in a second. So really just we want to kind of dive into a lot of questions, but there might be something that we have not asked that you have questions about. So feel free to utilize the Q&A feature, and we'll certainly try to get to those questions as we're able to. In addition, if there is something that we don't cover today, it focuses a little bit more on the admission side of things and not necessarily about the program, you will find our contact information there at the bottom. Give that number a call, chat, whatever's better for you. And an enrollment advisor would certainly be happy to speak with you. So with that being said, we have two amazing alum joining us today. We have BT and Mark. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for taking the time out of your Monday to speak with us. I know just from my perspective, I can talk to these students all day long. Our faculty can talk to them. But at the end of the day, what makes the difference is being able to hear from alum like you who were recently in their shoes, trying to look at the different programs, seeing which one would be a good fit, committing to the program, doing the program. And so you guys are obviously the professionals. And so we want to spend just a lot of time kind of diving into your experiences, your background. So with that being said, BT, I'd like to start with you. If you'll just give us kind of an introduction of who you are, how you ended up at what you're currently doing, and then Mark, if you'll follow, and then we'll kind of dive into some of these questions, if that sounds good with you guys.
Sure, thanks, Elizabeth. So I'm a recent graduate of the Master of Science and Finance program. And I'm from Chicago, born and raised, currently live in Georgia, coach baseball, and started with a political science background at Morehouse College down in Atlanta. I did all of the things you could think of with political science. I've interned on Capitol Hill, interned in the White House, and did my due diligence doing work with public policy at DePaul University in Chicago. And I realized in every conversation that kept being brought up, it always came down to one thing: money, finance. How are we going to fund this? How are we going to raise this? And I realized, okay, if you're watching a movie and you're looking at the superhero, start looking at the person that is the financier, the person in the background that's actually influencing deals, brokering deals to make things happen. And that's what really took it full circle for me. And I realized, you know what? After reading this book called Powernomics, another book called Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson, he's from Florida. I said, you know what? Let me look into the University of Miami, Harvard Business School, and really enjoyed my time there. I mean, I can recall working with professors that helped me in my transition, because I was working as a CFO for a fintech startup called Bro Capital, BREAUX. And he told me, so you know what, we have to go over you guys' portfolio because you're co-mingling funds. So like he really helped me out with that. And right now that landed me into going into Guardian Life Insurance, Mass Mutual, and now I'm currently at E-Trade Morgan Stanley. So just
Fantastic.
networking, the Atlanta Canes down here in Georgia really have helped me out. Right now we're gearing up for the University of Alabama, Miami college football kickoff in September. So a lot of folks are excited in Georgia right now.
I'm sure.
The UM has really helped me out. Anywhere I go now, I'm at the airport, Hartsfield Jackson, Atlanta. I'm at a ball game. Folks are just throwing it up. And that's leading to more conversations, just throwing up the U. So
Absolutely.
really excited about it. And I need to get down there for a baseball game. Go Canes.
That's right. That's right.
Hi, everyone. This is Mark Smith. So I elected to go to the University of Miami because I've always been a fan. Growing up, started probably around the fifth grade. First time seeing the Hurricanes was that infamous 2002 game. Dating myself here, but 2002, watching Miami versus Ohio State. We all know how that game went. From there, just fell in love with the game, the culture, the swagger of the U. One of the reasons for joining the University of Miami, coming down here, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, born and raised Florida boy. But ultimately wanted to go there because just wanted to support the team, but also just really loved the overall culture. Thought the academic program was top tier and excellent. So one of the things that occurred for me is first started out a career in engineering. I really wanted to be a mechanical engineer, and then kind of moved my way from there and shifted into industrial engineering, which led into kind of process improvement. And then as time moved on, fell in love with business more so than engineering. Found a lot of opportunities in supply chain management, transportation logistics, which is big here in Jacksonville, and very similar. Ultimately, every conversation was around money. Whether that was budgets, whether that was projecting sales in the future, whether that was just trying to identify and understand how costs occurred. Ultimately, I said, you know what? I want to go back to school and really have more of a breadth and understanding of how finance works, because it seems like it's the bloodline of business and also just the language of business, primarily senior execs. So ultimately, just a quick background around that, but that's really the biggest takeaway around why I think this program is going to be very interesting, really one that you should consider joining, and ultimately finance is definitely the way to go.
Absolutely. Well, again, I definitely appreciate both of you guys taking the time out of your busy schedules and work days to speak with us. It certainly means a lot to me, and I can only imagine how much it means to these prospective students who are joining us today. Two things actually, one thing that I want to note is that both of you are entered the program with completely different backgrounds, and that's probably one of the biggest questions that I get on a day-to-day basis is, Liz, I have a background in blank, but I have a passion for finance, and what I'm doing right now, it would only help me if I could dive into the finance field. Talk a little bit about that kind of experience. I know students have questions about, prerequisites, and, of course, with our program, we thankfully don't require any prerequisites. Now, our faculty, of course, they'll take a look to see if you have any business courses or finance courses, and that's always helpful. But our faculty do want to make sure that students like yourselves that are coming in with backgrounds in policy or engineering are able to fully dive into this degree. So if you don't mind, just tell me a little bit about that transition, especially those first few courses. Did you find that, our faculty kind of helped you into the process, being in engulfed with a classroom full of individuals like yourself who are also kind of tackling that different career change. Can you share a little bit about that experience in particular?
Brian, would you like to lead off first?
Oh, yes. So coming into the program, because of my background, and this is why I have so much respect for the admissions team when they're partnering with the finance committee and selecting folks that will be allowed to enroll in the program, is that they looked at my background and said, you know what? We're not going to fully accept them into the Master of Science and Finance program. And tell you the truth, I was ticked off. I was talking to my admissions enrollment advisor and just letting them have it. I was like, wait a minute. I already got a Master of Science in public policy at DePaul University, downtown Chicago. Credible organization, credible university. And they said, well, you know, we want to see, we want to see how you do with the certificate program first. And I took that as a challenge. Former baseball player, and I'm one of those, if you get mad, don't get mad at nobody else, just take it out on the ball. So I took it out on the books. I took it out on the reading. I took it out on the formulas I had to memorize for the quizzes and the exams. And my first course, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but the professor, he made us write everything out by hand. I'm thinking, okay, we're online. We're gonna do something online. He was like, no, this first course, I want to see everything in your handwriting. And I was like, this is gonna take me forever. He said, I don't care. I want to make sure that I'm pushing you so I know you know what to do by hand before we transition to what? The Excel spreadsheets, where you can just plug and play the formulas. So going through that process, I never pledged before, but it felt like I was pledging a little bit, where I was really forced to ingratiate myself in what the professors wanted me to do. I had to maintain that 3.0, otherwise I would be on probation. And within those 4 courses, now I was able to obtain my certificate in corporate finance, which allowed me to circle back with my enrollment advisor. And he said, yeah, you told me you was gonna take it out on the ball. Okay, go ahead now and submit your application into the MS in Finance program, and we'll see what the committee says. So I was fortunate enough to be accepted. They saw my work, they saw my grades, and the professors, they felt comfortable with me progressing with the more advanced courses, which of course they did get rigorous. You know, one of my favorite poets, he's actually signed to a Miami-based record label, Maybach Music Group, Wale. He said, late nights turn into early days. So if you're comfortable with that, knowing that you're going to grind it out, but the end is in sight and obtainable, then this is the program for you.
Well said, well said, and I completely agree. I was in a similar situation as well. When I first applied here, I had a background in business, but it was more operations based. So transportation logistics, a lot of analytics around how to move product and inventory. So when I first applied here, I was in the same boat. They said, well, hey, look, your credentials, we like what we see, we like the potential, but we'd like you to try out this certificate pathway and program first before we admit you into the full program. And I looked at it as a challenge as well. Also looked at it as a test to see what my commitment was to the U. So ultimately, you take your first 3 courses before you can apply for the actual full program. And as BT was just explaining there, it is rigorous. It's one where you do have to have a level of organization and a level of consistency and commitment. And the best way to do so is to stay organized. But ultimately, Miami does a very good job with selecting the right candidates for the program, whether that is the certificate program or the full program, where they're going to evaluate and see, okay, what does this prospective student have that are kind of transferable skills? How much have they learned from their background, whether that is engineering, political science, whether that's business, but in a different boat, or if that's biology or science. And they want to see how much of your thought process, work ethic, and your ability to analyze will transfer into the finance program. But again, as BT was explaining, it's going to be some rigorous days, some late nights, some early mornings, and you'll get comfortable with it as time goes on. It's going to be a little intense up front because it is a more accelerated program with the kind of 7 weeks per class. But ultimately, if you have kind of a system, if you stay organized, if you treat your Sundays like the first day of the week, and you continue to kind of knock out those key assignments, and you take your notes, you ask questions with the professors, and you do your due diligence, it'll pay out. It'll pay dividends. Ultimately, a lot of your professors, they'll say you will get out of it what you put in, and it's very true. The more you put in that work, that effort, the more you have that competitive drive, as BT was explaining, just like that baseball drive, you will be rewarded for that. So it's definitely a good program if that's your mindset, if that's what you want to do, to pursue the finance program here at Miami. That's definitely the way to go.
Absolutely. And I didn't realize that you both had started off with our certificate and then transitioned into the master's program. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that is actually a really common, process that students do. And so many people think, oh, well, I'm being punished. I'm not good enough to get into the master's program. And that's not it at all. Our faculty, their goal is to make sure that we're setting our students up for academic success. And so by starting off with that certificate, you're not just getting a master's, but you're getting a certificate as well in the same amount of time that you would have completed the master. So it's kind of one of those hidden gems that a lot of people don't realize. So I appreciate you both sharing that insight. Kind of going off to what both of you were talking about, specifically time management, because the program is tough. I mean, yes, it's flexible, but it is a 16-month program. So you're condensing, roughly 2 years work in a traditional master's into that 16-month period. So it can be a lot. And I would say probably about 80 to 90% of the students that I talk to are full-time working adults. And so can you both just share a little bit about your experience of how you made it work on a day-to-day basis? Kind of what your traditional schedule looked like. I know that could probably fluctuate some just depending on, of course, the faculty and what course. But any insight you can share with our students would certainly be appreciated.
Sure. It's really important, like Liz said, knowing that time management is important, and it comes off like, oh, I've heard it before, here we go again, but it's really true. Most of the professors will have weekly submissions, not just quizzes, because that's usually the last thing, but you have to actually engage with your cohort, your classmates. They're going to post questions. You have maybe a day or two to respond to that discussion, and it won't be mainly opinionated. You're going to have to get some type of fact-based perspective, and it's usually going to have to derive from PDFs that they posted, where you're citing what was said, as well as, depending on the class, you may have 2, 3, 4 hard copy books that you had to order. One of my favorite books is Dark Pools, that we ordered and went over, and to this day, I'm still citing that book as to what goes on with ECNs, electronic communication networks, and how that to this day is even legal. But it's really helped, as well as with that time management, you're tying in what your classmates are doing. So beyond what Liz, Mark, and myself and the rest of the UOnline team are discussing today, I know what we did was we appointed a designated WhatsApp coordinator. She used that WhatsApp, and Pam was on point. She was able to bring the entire MSF program together, that entire cohort, as well as she allowed us to be an extension to the MBA cohort that was going on. So we was able to ingratiate ourselves with the MBA class as well. Still stay in contact with those folks, and right now planning to go down for homecoming.
That's awesome. And I agree. What BT was saying in regards to communication, that's going to be a big piece of it. So as Liz just explained as well, in regards to looking at how to manage that full-time work with actually going into a full-time program such as this one, it just comes down to organization. So get very comfortable using a lot of technology. So Miami does a very good job when you first get on with the program. They provide you an Office 365 subscription. You can use that for Outlook, for emails. You can use that for if you want to leverage Planner. I use that to a degree, Planner, to kind of break out pretty much my day into chunks. I would say, okay, I know I'm going to be at work full time for 8 hours plus a lunch break. How much time do I have after work and maybe even slightly before work to work on assignments, to complete tests, to study for tests? So one thing to do is kind of, if you break out your time in kind of 30-minute to hour chunks, you can look at what things to take care of. As BT was explaining before, if it's some of those weekly discussions that you have to participate with your fellow colleagues and students with, you can knock some of those kind of assignments out. You can use WhatsApp, you can use text, you can use different ways to communicate with your team. Look at when the office hours are with respective professors, identify when those are, designate and block out that time, make sure it doesn't kind of impact what your work schedule is so that you can make them. And if you can't, just communicate that out to your professor. They may work with you. They may record those sessions where you can go back and see them maybe after hours, or you can reach out to them maybe outside of those hours for them to, answer some of your more specific questions. But really, that's the basis to how to manage a full-time workload with a full-time working position with a full-time school position, is really that organization of breaking out your day into those 30-minute hour chunks and really committing time during those breaks, and not to overwhelm yourself or to get to a point where you are taking on maybe too much. Just try to space it out, do it incrementally, give yourself breaks in between the time. If you run into some of those roadblocks, again, communication being key, ask as many questions as possible. That's what the faculty here at the U are for. That's what your fellow students are here for. We're all one family. We're one U, and that's what we do. We help each other out, not just during the program, during the classes, but as BT was explaining, afterwards, when you can go to games, when you can go to events, when you can throw up that U. So that's ultimately how to best manage that full-time working workload and schedule, with being able to identify and knock out the things necessary for the program.
Absolutely. And I love that you both touched on kind of the networking aspect that happens somewhat unintentionally in the classroom. I think a lot of times people think, oh, well, it's an online degree. I'm on my own little island. I'm going to have to, drive to Miami just to get my questions answered from our faculty. And I know that we intentionally keep our classes small, not just so that the faculty who also work with our on-campus students can, connect connect with you and be able to invest in you on a personal basis, but also so that you can be able to have the opportunity to network with your peers. And VT, I love that you're already planning a trip for homecoming, and hopefully, your classmates will come as well. That is fantastic. And BT, you mentioned earlier, having the opportunity to be able to throw up the U in airports. And so if you don't mind, both of you just kind of diving into kind of going off of that networking, how your degree from the University of Miami and those connections have helped impact you now, whether it be the brand, having that diploma that says the University of Miami, or the connections that you built with our faculty, if they helped you find your current position, or just the connections that you made in the classroom with your peers.
Yeah. As soon as you start at this program, get on Handshake. I wasn't active enough, and I must say that when I was turning that third base, sliding home, graduating, I didn't secure a position. It took me a long time, and I was contacting the dean's office. I was contacting almost every professor. I literally contacted every professor I had worked with, and and it was still a struggle. I even contacted the in-person career program administrators outside of UOnline, just because I wanted to cast a wide net. Like, okay, what's going on? I've applied on Handshake, and I must say, Handshake to this day still reaches out to me. One of the main things with Handshake is you have to be prepared to relocate. I've had Bank of New York Mellon. I actually love that bank. I'm a stockholder. They wanted me to relocate, and I kept saying, no, I want to stay in Georgia. So UOnline administrators and the career advancement Handshake, as well as when I reached out to the in-person administrators, they all said, you got to be open to relocate. And so that was my roadblock in terms of taking me a while to secure a position. But if you're looking to relocate, it's going to be smooth sailing. I've had the Treasury Department in DC. They had an office in New York, banks out in California. The list goes on, insurance companies. So for me, I didn't want to relocate, but work on it, keep talking to folks. And I finally found something with E-Trade Morgan Stanley, as well as when I was with Mass Mutual. But E-Trade Morgan Stanley, it's a $1 trillion company by total assets. One of the best decisions I made. And, a lot of folks there that work at those two companies. Morgan Stanley acquired E-Trade in 2020. There's a lot of alum from the University of Miami. So when they see that on your application, when you had that interview process, a lot of folks, they'll say, I chuckled when I saw it. I said, oh yeah, I know that school. I know Miami Herbert. So for that, and just working that network. And again, if you're willing to relocate, you're going to go through that process much faster. I went on, it took me longer because I was being stubborn, because I really want to have my roots in Georgia. So for that, I would say just keep working Handshake, talk to everybody, the professors down in Miami, especially looking to do something in Florida. There was some opportunities where I could have flew down to Miami. The program was doing a public-private partnership presentation, but then because of COVID, it wound up getting canceled. But there's so many different opportunities. Just stay on the email list, keep calling, check in monthly or quarterly, and something to pop up, especially if you're looking to do something and willing to relocate. They're looking for you.
BT, I couldn't agree more. It's so true. Leveraging Handshake, upon graduation, even during graduation, leveraging LinkedIn as well. That's another good one. But at the same time, the U itself, that logo, the University of Miami, Miami Herbert Business School, is a school and a logo and a brand that is known worldwide. When people see that on resumes, when people see you throw up the U and you represent saying that you've actually come through this program and you put in the work, people know, people recognize that immediately. And that's definitely one thing I would say is that by it being worldwide, as well as BT was explaining, people are going to want you immediately. There's going to be a lot of job opportunities all over this country, even all over this world. And just continue to put yourself in that position to be prepared to jump after those opportunities, to be able to uproot if you have that opportunity to do so. And ultimately for me, very similar. COVID made things a lot differently, but currently my role as a financial analyst is actually based in Richmond, Virginia. And I have been born and raised in Jacksonville most of my life. And ultimately, before COVID, this would have been a role where I would have uprooted and moved from Jacksonville to Richmond. They were able to make it a hybrid role where it was remote only because of COVID. And so far, it's been successful that way. They may look at that going forward, at everything after the pandemic. There may be opportunities for remote work. But it is very true, as BT was saying, a lot of companies are going to say, hey, we're in New York, we're in San Francisco, we're in Seattle, we're in South Florida. We want you to come join us. We want you to join our community. Because ultimately that's always a part of it with corporate as well. There's the half of your technical skills and what you provide from a talent standpoint and productivity, but then there's also the commitment and compatibility piece where, often companies want you to be kind of near them and around to kind of join in those volunteer activities and services, or just join as a collective unit for maybe after hour events. So just look at those things. And as BT was explaining, Handshake, that's one of the kind of more, it's similar to LinkedIn, but ultimately you just kind of get your resume out there, you show people what you're doing, and employers get to see your credentials, your resume, if you like to upload it, your anything. So really just good opportunities to network there.
Absolutely. So it sounds like, we'll put the brand out there for you. Our faculty, they'll do everything they can. Topple Career Center as well. But at the end of the day, it does take a big level of commitment on the students' end to put yourself out there. As uncomfortable as it may be, it will certainly pay off. So I appreciate you both saying that. And before we go to the next question, I do want to say again, listeners and attendees, I know that we are going through a lot of information and there might be questions that you guys want to be able to ask these gentlemen. And so if you do, feel free to utilize the Q&A feature, especially as we head into the last segment of this interview with them. It should be at the bottom of your screen. But gentlemen, kind of going into a different question, let's talk about the online platform. This was and is a 100% online platform, which is easier to find these days because of COVID and how it's, transitioned the market and everything. But I know that unfortunately there are a lot of schools that they still require students to come to campus, and that can just be very difficult. And so talk to us a little bit about how the online platform gave you the flexibility that you needed. What was it like kind of on a day-to-day basis? Was everything that you needed all in one space? Did you ask questions, library? Kind of give me a little bit of an idea of what that consisted of.
Sure. I definitely want to thank Mark for bringing up LinkedIn, and for Liz for bringing up Topple Career Center. Topple Career Center took my, hate to admit it, 5-page resume down to 2 pages, depending on the employer, and 1 page for most employers. So yeah, LinkedIn is huge. I was on Indeed and ZipRecruiter, and Topple said, straight talk, no chasers, stay off of those sites, stay on LinkedIn and Yeah, LinkedIn, and then Handshake, and keep reaching out to Top of Career Center. So I want to thank y'all for bringing those up. Huge helps. When it comes to the online platform, Blackboard, Blackboard is huge. There's so many different resources. I got a whole folder to this day where I've just been bookmark from, they start you out with the UOnline math preparation topics. They give you that PDF. You go over the academic resources support center. And it's really helpful because sometimes you think you know it all. And again, going back to time management, it's a reason why you don't want to wait until that day or the day before for that assignment to actually work on it, for it to be due. You want to give yourself enough time, whether you're using a calendar, something, whether that's electronic or physically, but just figuring out, okay, it's due this day. If I'm struggling early, I've already reached out to the professor, also reach out to those academic resources. They'll go over with you about the modules, how that works, the submission, and if you have any compression issues. We went over value investing. We went over APA style, because you may have a professor that may have you write something out, especially when it comes to discussions. And certain professors are stricter than others in terms of what they want, how they want that format set up when you're quoting from a source, even in the financial industry. And yeah, Blackboard has been a huge help. As I mentioned, Topple, you'll learn more about quantitative and analytical fundamentals, the advanced portions of it. You'll get used to bookmarking a finance calendar, and the email, which you can access through Blackboard, is also helpful. It really helped me a lot when I was looking for the directory of certain professors. I'm not sure if Dr. Brian is still there, but I know I've had Professor Alejandro. But yeah, it's just a huge help with Blackboard because you get to go over so many things in the resources. When it comes to that library, they have access to almost everything. You get the full library, and that's huge because a lot of things that you're looking to do, if you didn't have that access, you will be charged for it, but it's already included when you're looking to get those resources. So it was a huge help when I had to figure out, discussions outside of the books I already had. Because the professors are very upfront about, don't just think you're going to write anything you want in this discussion. It has to be tied to answering this question, and it must be a cogent response. Otherwise, don't expect to get a grade that you were intended.
So true. That's so true. And just to add to that as well, the online structure, if you're a person that likes to kind of learn on your own, if you feel that some of that level of isolation where you can kind of go back and look at videos over and over, I would say that this online program is the best for you as well. Having that flexibility, not only to be able to go to school and work, but oftentimes your professors are going to have a lot of videos already pre-recorded where they go through context, whether that's at a general overview or in depth or in detail. Outside of that, you're going to get a lot of PowerPoint slides as well that you can leverage. Anytime you're reading through a textbook and it's maybe a concept that you can't grasp or you may not grasp 100%, your professor will usually have PowerPoint slides that will go a little more in depth into some of those more difficult topics, or allows you to kind of bridge that gap where you can say, hey, there may be a disconnect. Let me ask the professor to get further clarification. Sometimes your professors are more open, like during your office hours, if you have a certain question, they're willing to create videos, recorded videos where they work out certain problems. It may not necessarily be a problem from your homework or a problem that's on a quiz, but conceptually it will be the same. So maybe a different problem, but the actual mechanics of it are the same as a problem on your homework or a problem on your quizzes. They'll walk you through it. It just gives you that flexibility to do things over and over. So it allows you to learn at your own pace. Sometimes in a classroom environment, your professor may have to adjust and situationally make something very standard for the entire room. So oftentimes they may go through certain concepts a little faster than others. Sometimes they may go through them slower and you want to just kind of move on to the next thing. You're like, hey, I'm already on the next page. But doing an online program allows you that flexibility to do it at your own pace. So you can do that whether it be faster or slower. A lot of your professors, if you ask them up front, hey, can I complete an assignment earlier than needed? They'll allow you to. You may be able to, if you want to proactively jump to the next week, you can. Even on the flip side, if something comes up in life, if it's like, hey, I had something occur in my life where I'm not going to be able to get this assignment or this quiz done by X date, they may work with you, depending on the reason. If it's actually a legit one, there may be a little bit of a grace, some flexibility. Don't expect that all of the time, but they'll work with you as long as you are showing that effort, you're showing that work, and you're a consistent student. The faculty and the school will work with you, and vice versa. It's a reciprocal kind of relationship. But ultimately, that online program gives you that flexibility to be able to learn the way you want to and be able to grasp those concepts the way you need to.
Absolutely. Oh, go
And Liz,
ahead, BT.
Liz, I want to add, thanks, Mark, for bringing that up. This program is asynchronous. So exactly what Mark said, you get to rewind what was just said. And a lot of programs, you have to have a live feed to that professor, and that's it.
Mhm.
Office hours and the live feed, and that's it. You get pre-recorded videos as well as the office hours. And most professors have office hours on Tuesdays, maybe Wednesdays, but it's usually Tuesdays because it gives you 2 days, because the week starts on Sunday. It gives you 2 days to go over the material, you know, take a good stab at it. Anything you're not fully understanding, write it down, circle it, do what you got to do, and then bring it up. I would say send the email to the professor so he already knows it's that question's coming, and then make sure you're signed down for the office hours. You take full advantage of interacting with one of the best faculty in the world, in my opinion. I mean, Miami is considered the Latin financial capital of the world. So with especially the way everything's emerging now, or merging, you got so much going on, and that's why Miami is the place to be. But yeah, asynchronous is huge. If you didn't understand something, just rewind it. You can watch it again and again.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, again, we are at the end of our time. So I just want to thank you both so much for coming and sharing a little bit more about your experiences with the U and how this program has helped impact you professionally now, how it impacted you while you're in the program. This is incredibly valuable information for these prospective students to hear. So again, I just sincerely appreciate you both. Before we end, we did have a quick question about international students. We absolutely have international students in the program, kind of going back to what these gentlemen shared. It is 100% online. So just give our enrollment advising team a call. You can go to the website and we'll get you more information about that. But as we wrap up, if my PowerPoint will slide over, technical issues. Perfect. Okay, so the final application deadline is right around the corner. Today is actually our early admissions deadline. So if you have already started an application, or if you know, hey, this is the program I want to get into, if you can get your application submitted by this evening at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will qualify for our $300 tuition deposit waiver. I know that that's not much time to work with, so if you still decide to apply, by all means, please feel free to do so. The financial aid application deadline is also Monday, August 16th as well. By attending today, you will be receiving our $300 tuition deposit waiver regardless. So congratulations to you guys all for doing that. We'll be sure to get that added to your application. Again, there is our contact information. So feel free to reach out to us as well as the link to the application. But we do appreciate you all for taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. Let us know if there's anything that we can help you with, and we'd be happy to do so. But go Canes.
That's right. Go Canes.
All right. All right, guys. Y'all have a great day.